Hey, it's time for a little maintenance on my 2011 Strat. I'm going to replace the strings. These are the Dario New York XLs. I'm going to put on a standard set of XL 110s. I liked these strings. They were a little pricey here in Canada. They were like $17.95 before the ridiculous 13% sales tax on top of that. But they were a little bit warmer, a little bit creamier sounding, not by a whole lot. But I could get that, you know, with the tone knob if I wanted to. So it wasn't really worth the money, in my opinion. So I tried them on a guitar at a guitar show, and I thought, well, I'll give them a shot. So I bought a set. And they weren't terrible. They were actually quite nice. Been on here for about a year. If you've been watching any of my videos, you know that I don't really play the Strat very much. I kind of go towards my home-built tellies the most of the time. So we're going to replace the strings, but I'm going to go over all the frets, polish them up, clean the fretboard, although this is, you know, pretty easy to clean. It's you know, a nice polyed in maple. Now I don't know if I mentioned this before or not, but when I got this, it seemed pretty nice, but after using it a while, teaching myself to play, and I start learning how to do bends, all of a sudden I realized there was poly on top of the frets that they hadn't cleaned off. And I'm thinking, on an American Stratocaster, they send them out with poly on the frets. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I ended up having to very carefully sculpt around every fret with an X-Acto, scrape it all off, polish them all up, crown them all up nice, and get them bare again. So after I see a few little flat spots here and there, which I'm going to touch up as part of this maintenance, and I put this Pickguard on it. It's a pearl white with a set of Texas Customs pickups in it, including all of their electronics. This was because I was extremely disappointed in that flat white Pickguard that came on such an expensive guitar. At least I thought it was expensive, and I wasn't happy with the sound of the pickups in it. So I went online and I was looking, and I found this company called Texas Customs out of Texas, which I can't seem to find their website again right now. They may have gone out of business. Listened to some of the stuff they had online, and I thought, if those are decent, I think I will invest. So I found this place in California called CF Music One, is a seller on eBay, and I ordered the whole Pickguard. They pre-wire the whole thing, they serialize the back of it and the like. And I told them, I said, I have a 2011 Strat, American Standard, and I want it to match the 2011 hole layout on my guitar. I don't want to drill any new holes. So it comes in the mail, and next thing I know, the Pickguard is not matching the hole pattern. So I called them up and we dickered a bit, and the manager at the time says, I tell you what I'm going to do. He says, I'm going to refund your money for this. He says, you just keep it and, you know, do whatever you want with it. I said fine. Since I'm pretty handy with these things, I'm trained in this area of electronics. I went down to my local Long & McQuaid. I picked up this Pickguard for 60 bucks, plus that ridiculous 13% tax. I transferred all their electronics onto this Pickguard and installed it, and it's been there ever since. Now, what I didn't do at the time was put any shielding in, because I didn't really know about shielding back in 2011. This was only the second electric guitar I'd ever bought, and I didn't really know about it. So now I know better. Oh, I'm going to have trouble getting that out. I'm going to have to take off the back plate. Oh! As Dave says, somebody likes me. So I'm going to turn this over and get the back cover off, because I have it blocked in a bit and the strings won't come through. And then we'll get back. Alright, I have the Pickguard removed, the strings are off. And now I remember that I found a lot of buffing dust left in here. You know, just like you find in Chinese guitars. I didn't pay attention to it at the time. I figured, well, it's in there, I don't care. It's not going to harm anything. But as you can see, this Strat body is routed out for humbucker, single humbucker. And even though it came with 3 singles on it, we'll get to the Pickguard in a moment. It says in there that it's body as Strat UPGR Candy Cola Dry. There's a hole here. I'm not sure what that would have been for. But other than that, it's you know, standard American Stratocaster. And I'm going to need to vacuum out all of this dust so that my adhesive copper will stick in it. So this Fender, it's an actual Fender Pickguard, comes with aluminum foil all around the components. Now here's this thing that they call, this was a special pickup, it was called tube and turbo. Now look right there, get that to focus. There's a vacuum tube in parallel with this capacitor, which is run cold. There's no battery system for it. And this was supposed to be something great in the tone control system, which I can no longer remember what it was about. Now look at the switch. I mean, this is a high quality switch. There's another capacitor down there. Before I transferred all this stuff, or when I transferred it onto this Pickguard, I didn't bother trying to figure out the schematic for it. Now these pots have got Texas branding on them. I can't remember if I saw any other name on them initially when I was doing the other work. My camera seems to be constantly out of focusing. But anyway, these pickups are what I think is the cat's meow for my Strat and what I like. And I've just been really happy with them, especially since I ended up getting it all for free. But even paying $350 US for it was a pretty good deal compared to buying all these different components yourself and building it up. Anyway, really nice components in this, beautiful capacitors, nice pots, terrific switch. So I'm not going to bother with any more shielding around the back of the Pickguard. I'm only going to clean up in here and get going on installing the shielding. So this is part of the process. I had to sacrifice a small paintbrush by making it stiff bristled to get down inside the cavities and brush in the corners. This stuff is, well, it's been there a long time, and it's quite more difficult to get off than I thought. So it's this process, and then I'm going to wipe it down with Varasol to get off as much of the rest of it as I can, to give me a surface to stick to. So you get the idea. I'm at the wiping down with the Varasol. I know Varasol will not hurt polyurethane. That's a pretty good surface cleaning job. I could have used naphtha, but it evaporates too quickly, and Varasol is a little bit slower to evaporate, and it seems to be doing a pretty good job of getting this stuff off, especially the walls, because I have a good angle of attack on them. The bottom is very rough. Doesn't matter as long as I get enough surface area that I can get some adhesive to stick to make a Faraday cage type environment. That's all I need. When I bought this Pickguard, I requested white pearl with black covers and hardware control on it, so I wanted the black-white contrast. And they sent me also a black jack cup. And then when I got the black jack cup, I looked at it and I go, all things considered, I think I'm just going to stick with the silver one, because I thought it looked better on it. And I haven't regretted that at this point. Okay, so now that I see the Varasol drying up in some of the other cavities, there's still some whiteness on the walls, but I'll give it another pass and see if any more comes off. I'm going to have to vacuum out all of the paper towel as well before I start working on the shielding. Powder is quite a mess. Quite a mess. It's another very expensive tool to have. It's a used toothbrush, which is no longer good for the teethies, but pretty good for brushing out debris and things until it gets too crudified, and then you got to throw it away and replace it with another one. And even when I need extra ones, I just go to the dollar store and pick up a bunch of them for cheap, and they make really good little tools to brush stuff off with. I did start with this in here and realized I didn't have enough vertical control into the corners, so that's why I made the paintbrush cut off. Well, that's starting to look pretty good. Here I am 7 years later now. Like I said, I was quite a novice when I bought this guitar. I didn't even know how to play. So some of you may have seen some of my music instrumentals that I post on my channel here. If you haven't, you should take a look. Subscribe. Alright, I'm at the point where I think I've cleaned it well enough inside. I'll just check there and see if it's alright. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. The Varasol is pretty much evaporated everywhere. Got all the little bits out of the paper towel. all around the upper edges I did with NAFTA. I want it to be quite nice because I have to overlap the top just a bit so it will sit on the aluminum foil here. And I realized here along the outside of the pickups I'm going to have to add a little bit of strip of copper there, and along the bottom where it sits here at the top of the guitar, because the lip where it's going to come over here is going to be fairly narrow and it doesn't come down far enough here, so I'm going to have to put this right to the edge and trim it off with copper, and probably all along there as well. We have to put a strip here. I'll just see when I close that. No, it's going to be fine. All of this part's going to cover right around the lower part of these pickups over here, so that's going to be just perfect. But right up around the neck, I've got a very slim area, so I've got to bring this up here to the screw hole across there and run this down here and cover a little bit more. So I've got leftovers. I knew I was going to do this someday. When I started building the telly, I thought I've got to go back and do my Strat sometime. So I bought extra when I did the telly, and since then I bought some extra rolls as well. Quite deep cavities in here compared to a Telecaster, so it's going to take a little more time than I was thinking when I started this morning, after seeing how big this hole is and how much material it's going to take to do it. So it's going to be what we call a labor of love. Trusty X-Acto knife is out. Now, when I was doing this on the telly, if any of you have seen it, I mentioned you need to be really careful. Here's some of the small parts I can use to go along the edges just to be able to do it. They're pretty much pre-cut from the last job. Once you peel off this adhesive, this is like a very thin copper razor blade. So you need to be extremely careful playing with this around the edges and running your finger along it, because if there's any little lip up, it's going to slice into you like nothing. So, word of caution. Now, I think it's time for a little lunch, and then I'll come back and start doing some of this, and we'll get you updated when some of that's done. Okay, it's been a few hours, and I just wanted to show the cavities that are now fully shielded right up there in the corner. I got in real tight around the wires coming through. This screw here was sitting in the guitar not doing anything, so in order to ground the entire cavity I added an extra wire up to the grounding and just twisted it with the existing one coming from the bridge to make sure everything was grounded together. And then there you can see I added the extra copper strips along the edge of the pickguard where it's going to pick up on the lip that I did all around the edge. So this comes sort of a a common width of hours of measuring and cutting and folding to make sure that it's uniform everywhere. So now I'm going to see if I can get the pickguard back on and move on to the next bit. Alright, got the pickguard in, and I've tested the pickups with the switching to make sure that everything has its correct functionality just by tapping for now. So I've got my little guards taped off the back. This is going to just be a quickie over. Got a 1500 and 2000. most of these are just going to be a 2000, I think. Just to roll over the top. And a couple of rougher ones I might go 15 first. I see a couple of abrasions there. Probably don't need any more than that, so this is 15. And back here. Alright, so we're going to give that a shot. Just hold it there and run it over. Take a look. Yep, it's working. I always keep a light at an angle so I can see the shine at the top of the fret and where the divots are as to whether or not I'm making any dent in them. And I am. So it's not very deep. It's fairly superficial on all of these things, and it's not really going to hurt the crown on here much at all. I said much, if at all. And if I feel it is, what I'm going to do is tape it and just roll over the edges to make them ground up again. But I think it's going to be okay without it. I took off about an hour during supper. I'll probably leave the restringing till tomorrow morning. Still going to have to polish them later with autosol after this. I'm going to do a 2000 on top of this just to bring it up a little shinier with the sandpaper. Take the 1500 grit off. This sanding makes them look a little duller than they are. They're kind of shiny right now. As you can see, this goes down here pretty fast. Just to touch them up. Well, way down here they're not really as bad. There's not a lot of playing beyond the 12th fret for me most of the time. And when there is, it's just a small part. 2000 takes off a minuscule amount. So when you're working with the 1500, if there's some tiny little bit left over, I usually wait to see what the 2000 will do and see if it makes it good enough, or go back another pass with the 15, bring it down a little bit more, and then go back up to the 2000. But you learn to gauge it after a while. See, that one came out perfect. There's a tiny little bit of a divot there on that one where the B string would be. And I can see it, but I don't feel it, so that's okay with me. The other thing I'm going to do before I put strings on it is I'm going to check for high frets. It is, slightly possible by doing this that some frets need a little bit more than others and may cause a small imbalance for fret height. Now, most of the time this will not cause a high fret problem, which would require, recrowning. Okay, so now here's a little bit more time consuming with the cream. Usually makes a little bit more dirt also. So I put this on there, kind of rub it in a little bit so it's not kind of sloppy, and just to go over the top. And what this will do is just basically polish up the 2000 to a nice glossy shine. Yes, very nice. So I'm not going to bore you with all that part. The dirt comes off the top of that. Yes, this is an absolute necessary step to get them nice and glossy and slick. I won't bore you, and I'll be back when I'm on to the next phase, which will probably be putting strings on. Before I install the strings, I just wanted to take a shot of the bridge block, how I've locked it in. Right down here, its springs are tightened in quite a bit to lock it up this way, because I don't use the tremolo, and I have it set so that I can basically use this as sort of a fixed tail piece, and that's the way I like it. So I know some guys put blocks and stuff in here, but I found that I can just tighten those down and achieve the same result. Having it blocked down like that, once I get this cover on and I line up the screw holes, the problem is that you can't get the strings out, and it's quite difficult to get them in the holes through the block. So that's one disadvantage of doing it, but it's not that bad. Okay, strings are coming up, and I have the frets all polished and cleaned up right down to the end. Focus a little better, like that. And of course I've polished up all of the body of the guitar as well. So strings. Strings are on. You may also be able to hear that noise. It's the furnace, it's running. Got my little Korg tuner. I'm going to spin these things up. Bring them up to bitch, as Dave says. And wait for them to stretch up a little bit. We'll do a little sound check, and this baby will be ready to go back in the case for its next call of duty. Sound check. So here we are next to the computers in front of me here. I've got the amplifier directly behind my camera. So this used to make a lot of shh noise when I put it near the computer. Okay, still makes some straight onto the pickups in the front, which are basically unprotected through the front poles. And through the back, virtually quiet. Way much better than it was. So I'm happy with the amount of work. And the sound is good. I'm really happy. I had to adjust the high E string down a bit. I had played with the saddles because they weren't flat. Also had to adjust the intonation on B and G a little forward. They were flat, probably because of the thickness of the new strings. And other than that, everything went as planned. So since I just finished recording Dock of the Bay, let's see what it sounds like with the strings. have changed the strings and done all this before I recorded this song. I like it a little bit more tone. Okay. Anyway, that's it for the end of this update of my Stratocaster. Cheers!